Look at these big, beautiful eyes.
It's tough being old, eh, bud? Yeah.
Morning, sheepies.
G'day and welcome to episode 6 of the van build. Today I am going to be installing the solar panels on my roof and talking a little bit about the electrical system that I have intended for the van. But first, yesterday I took a day off and as you can see it resulted in a bit of a mess. So let me sort this out and then we'll get straight into it. I will be the first to admit that during a project I am not very good at keeping the workshop tidy. But at the start of each new project, I like to get it all ready again because I learned from my last build that stuff can really quickly get out of control with shit everywhere and then you can't find your tools or anything. And Judy will actually attest to that. And actually, while we're speaking of Judy, I know it wasn't a question in the last video's comment section, but I'm just gonna highlight this one because that's probably one of the favorite comments I've ever read. That was hilarious, thank you. Okay, so now for my solar setup, I am going to use, I'm going to be using two 160 watt Xantrex solar panels, and I've got their solar expansion kit, which gives me the mounting brackets, the cables, the entry port and everything. So if your maths is good, that's 320 watts of solar. My aim for this van was kind of a minimum of 300 watts. These days, everyone seems to be going super high with solar. Like you see 600 watts, 800 watts. In terms of appliances, my hot water system is going to be gas, my heating is going to be diesel. So I think 320 watts is going to be plenty for me. So now I'm going to get up on the roof and see how I can go about attaching these panels. People will be pleased to hear that order has been restored and the shoes off policy on the roof is now back in situ. Now, this is where I'm thinking for my two panels. So this is how the panels will sit with a little bit of length over this edge, which is a metal rail that goes on the Iveco roofs. My initial plan was actually to save screwing as many holes through the roof. I was going to attach this Z bracket to the metal rail and then up into the solar panel itself. The problem is because the Iveco roofs are such weird shapes, you can see here, it's actually sitting on that roof because there's a high point there. And I wouldn't want it touching the roof because then, you know, if there's any bumps or anything, it could be rattling and jolting it and potentially damage the panels as well. The other thing is, some people might not be aware, but these panels are designed to have an air gap underneath. And the reason for that is, funnily enough, these solar panels work best when they're not too hot. If they get too hot, their efficiency goes down. So you want airflow going underneath to help cool them down. So what I'm gonna have to do is just mount them the normal way. I'm going to attach these Z brackets to the roof here by a couple of screws. I'll then also Sikaflex over them as well and bolt onto this. Underneath, I'm going to put some pieces of wood just to really secure that up. Alright, so as you'll have just seen, I just relocated a couple of these holes for the mounting on the bottom because due to the undulations on the Iveco roof, it wouldn't have sat flat if I used their normal holes. So I'm going to attach all of these while I'm down here because everything is way more awkward to do on the roof. And it's good, these come with nylock nuts, so that won't rattle free at all with the vibrations when you're traveling. So I've added some of these strips, which is just this white putty tape that's similar to what I used underneath sealing the fans and the skylight. But I've added that to each bracket, and what that's going to serve to do is when the screws go through, it's going to make it more waterproof because it'll kind of push it around the screws. And in the meantime, when I'm positioning the panel on the roof, it'll also serve a dual purpose to help stop the metal scratching up the roof when I'm getting it in position. Just calling in the cavalry.
Hi, Max.
Hey, Judy. What are you up to?
I'm printing things off at the moment
And-
in the office.
And not checking your phone, huh?
No, did you try before? Or...
Yeah. No, that's okay. Could I please borrow you for 20 minutes or so?
Yeah, that should be fine. Just give me 5 or 10 minutes. Is that all right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I'll see you when you get here. Hey, Judy.
I'm here finally.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
Oh, that's for you. It's from the...
Oh, final. Okay, cool. All right, so what I have planned, just so you're aware, because I'm going to be up on the roof, but essentially I've already got one panel up there, and I'm going to be drilling 2 holes through each of the brackets,
Yes.
and then these bits of wood are going to be on the underside of the roof, and so the idea is that I drill screws into this, and it just gives it a bit more meat for the screws to pull into.
Yeah, I'll have to hold those while you drill.
Yeah, just from the
drop-
sides.
Just from the side, yeah.
Yeah, I'll make sure I don't drill your fingers. And it'll just be the
That's
screws.
so far.
Alright, so one important thing to remember is pull the cables out before you fix the panel down, because if you don't have much of a gap, it can be pretty tight. What did you think of people's reaction to you?
Oh, I haven't read that. That was hilarious. It's funny when they keep up on, isn't it? It's a bit slippery, mate. Slippery.
Alright, this is going to pre-drill deeper, so don't have your fingers underneath, Judy.
Yeah.
So that worked really well with it pulling into the wood. And with that membrane, the putty tape, I think there's really no way of water getting in underneath.
But yeah, just yell out.
No. Thanks for your help, Judy.
Oh, that's all right.
Bye.
Bye.
So Judy did a really great job of pushing these up firm, and that's really shored up the whole connection there. So that ain't coming loose. Let Judy know if you think she did a good job in the comments below, and give a like for Jude. All right, so now I've got to mark out the location for the cable entry plate. I've chosen this spot as well because it sits nice and high on the van, so water won't want to sit up here, and also I've got this way facing back, so it's better for aerodynamics, and hopefully wind won't make too much noise off it. Oh man. So I just made a real faux pas there. You know that saying, dial before you dig? Well, I did not do that. I should have checked underneath. That's a roof rib right there. And really, this bit of tape should have been in an indication because they are actually my markers for the ribs. So clearly there's a lapse in concentration. Luckily though, these roof boxes allow a little bit of play. I mean, it just means I'm going to have one extra hole in my roof that I didn't want. I've already got a few, but... So essentially I'll just move this back to here, and I'll be able to put the hole at the back, and that'll get me around the rib. Not ideal. And you know, if I wasn't filming this, I would just cover it up and no one would ever know. So now you guys do, so don't make the same mistake. Take 2. Whilst I've got this metal exposed too, I'm just going to give it a quick touch up with some primer to protect it. Okay, so I have come up with a solution to all 3 of the holes. This one, it's like it never happened. Voila. So these are just rubber grommets for electrical wiring, and that one is called a blanking grommet, so it blanks it out like it was never a thing. On these 2, I'm going to put this with a nice little protected hole for my 2 cables, and that'll protect the cables from the metal. There we go. Bloody beautiful, mate. All right, so I thought I'd take a very quick break and give a quick status update. It is 4 p.m. here on the farm, and after a questionable morning weather-wise, it has turned into a beautiful afternoon. I've got a bit over an hour of daylight left, and I'd love to smash this out before having to flick on the lights and everything. All I've got to do now is run the cabling and then put it through the connector box, do those quick connections, and I'll talk a little bit about parallel connections. And then we're done. Okay, a little word to the wise straight off the bat with running your cable. This is something I remember I did last time, which is why I'm not going to do it again. Before you run all your cabling through everywhere and get it, into where you need to be, this top connection, which, Xantrex has already put it together for you, has to start on the roof because it's not going to fit through that rubber grommet. So don't make that mistake. Put the cable through from the roof first and then run it. Otherwise, you're going to have to take it all apart and do it again. Okay, so now the cable is inside and it is running through the connector box. We are right to run it to where the battery is going to go. So if you follow this line, this is where the cables come through. I'm going to run them in through the wall, along, and then down, because this is where my batteries and everything's going to be. That's going to be my electrical setup down there. Ideally, you want to put it somewhere where you can run kind of the minimum cable length. That's why I'm going through there, and I don't have to use any extensions because of voltage drop. Someone in the comments did ask as well, which was a really good question, isn't it illegal to do your own electrical wiring in Australia? The answer to that is no. It is definitely stricter than overseas. You're allowed to do 12 volt wiring in Australia, but you're not allowed to do... Oh, there's a sheep stampede. Why is there always one slow one? So you're allowed to do... I have no idea what caused that. Sorry, they distracted me. So yeah, you're allowed to do 12 volt wiring in Australia. You're just not allowed to do 230 volt, which is household wiring. You need an electrician to do that part. In saying that, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't be safe while you're doing your 12 volt wiring. And so one thing that I'd say is really important to do, because once I connect those cables up on the roof, in the shed at the moment, it won't be getting power because there's no sun on it. But if there was any sun on those panels, it would be getting power, and that would mean that this end of the cables would be live. You'd also have a chance of shorting them if they touch together. So I'm going to use some electrical tape and cover up these ends now to make sure that they can't touch anything once they go live. So I can't remember what these are called, but they're super handy for both running your wiring and seeing where it can run. Unfortunately on the Ivecos, the ribs, they don't go up and through like they do on the Sprinters, which is a bit of a shame because you can't run the wiring down through the middle. It means I'm probably going to have to drill a couple of holes along here because I've got to be wary not to come out too far for the cladding as well. Make sure you check there's no wiring there. Alright, so I don't have a grommet big enough for this one, so I'm going to use some Coro, which is just corrugated protective plastic sheathing for the wiring. And I'll put this in the hole. And then eventually I'll just Sikaflex that in place, and that'll protect from the metal edges there. Alright, so that is the cable ran. As you can see, there's plenty of length. And if there's one thing I really learned from my last build, it is leave excess length if it's there. Don't trim it till the end. And even then, you know, if it's an extra 30 centimeters or so of cabling, you're not going to lose a lot of voltage, and it can be a real headache if you come up just short. So just so we're all on the same page on how to plug these in and how simple they are to connect to your battery system. So essentially the red positive and the black negative cable come down. They then go to your charge controller. So with this one, the positive and the negative just go in here from the solar, and then a positive and negative that we're also supplied that's fused goes to your battery system, and that's it. Okay, so finally we are up to the point of connecting these cables, and to be honest, it really couldn't be more straightforward. So the way that Xantrex has sent these set up, you can't really stuff it up, because you'll see this red positive has to go into this one, and when you hear the click, they're in tight. These are MC4 connectors, and the black negative, so you hear the click. And then you'll notice that these both have two connectors. Once again, they're both the same. And so don't get confused by the fact that both the cables coming off the panels are black. One is positive, one is negative. The negative will only connect to the negative, and the positive will only connect to the positive. So these connectors are weatherproof, waterproof. However, I'm still just gonna wrap them up. Ideally, I'd have them underneath the panels, but I just don't have enough cord length. So I'm gonna probably secure them just somewhere down here, wrap it up with tape. All right, as daylight officially starts to run out, I have neatened these up so it'll sit much better now. So all I need to do with these connection boxes, these tighten on, and that makes a really tight seal around the cable. Then I'm gonna put some Sikaflex around the bottom, Sikaflex that down, and I'll leave that overnight to set. Then you're done. Bob is your uncle at that point. All right, it is done, which is very unheard of for me to get a project done in one day, as many of you will know. I did promise before the end I was going to talk quickly about what I knew about series and parallel. So with those panels there, they come in a pack that's ready to be hooked up in parallel, and that's what I wanted. To be hooked up in parallel means the positive cable of one panel attaches to the positive cable of the other panel, and so on if you had more panels. And the negative to the negative, negative to negative. What that does is it means that the 18.1 volts that the panel is, that stays consistent. No matter how many panels you hook up, it stays 18.1 volts. The good thing about hooking up in parallel is that if, say, you're partially shaded on one panel by a tree, it doesn't affect any of the other panels. They all still work really efficiently. The other way to do it is in series, and that is where each panel you do positive to negative, and so on and so on. What that does is it means the voltage is the sum of all the panels. So for example, if there was two panels, it would be 18.1 volts plus the other panel 18.1, so it would be 36.2 volts. And then if you add another panel and another panel, it goes up and up. The reason that's good is it raises the voltage, and therefore if you have to run the cable over a long length, say at a house, then you don't lose out too much from voltage drop because you've got that higher voltage to start with. The problem is if you get partial shade on one panel when you're hooked up in series, all of your panels become less efficient. So essentially, Parallel works really good if you think you're going to get partial shading or anything like that. In the van, you often are, so most people do parallel. The way I know all of that is because I've watched a lot of van electrical videos, and one I want to highlight in particular is by Jazz Morton. He's an Australian with a really good YouTube series on van build conversion. He's also an electrician, so really worthwhile if you want to dive deeper into electrical to watch him. He knows a hell of a lot more than me, as you'll see pretty quickly. I chose Xantrex because I have used their products in the past. If you guys, any of you watched our videos when we were in Chile, they sent us that inverter, and to be honest, their customer care is so good, and they were really able to explain exactly what I needed, that when I went to do my electrical for solar, I wanted to go with Xantrex again. I will link their website in the description below, and yeah, that's it, guys. Next episode, which could be in a few days, could be in a week, make sure you have hit those notification bells, is going to involve either more electrical if my cable comes in time. Otherwise, I'm going to be cutting a couple of really big holes in the van. They're almost the last ones, so I'm excited to get it done. Give this video a thumbs up if you appreciated the effort and the content, or if you just appreciated Judy, and I will see you guys in the next episode. Thanks. Bye.